Good afternoon, everyone. And today, we will have to discuss about the performance standards, competencies, and the learning targets in mathematics.
Topic for today is all about the performance standards, competencies, and the learning targets in mathematics. And before that, we will have to identify first what is the performance standards, competencies, and learning targets. So, the definition of terms. Performance standards, it specify the level of performance in a skill or an area of knowledge that is considered acceptable. So that is according to Berger 1997. And these performance are aligned with both curriculum and the content standards in each subject area. So what is a performance? So when we say performance, that is the execution of a particular actions. So when you execute something, when you do something, that is called performance. But your performance depend how you execute that certain action, right? So if you are judged based on your performance, it depends upon your executions, how competent you are, and how did you well deliver the topic. Yes, and when we say standards, it refers to requirements or expectations that an individual must be met to appraise at a particular level of performance. So in whole or in a wrap up, performance standards are about how competent you are in doing or executing, or when we say if you are a student, how competent you are in studying your studies, and that is your performance. And when you are a teacher, it depends upon how you deliver the topic to the students or to the learners. And your performance standards are aligned as well to the curriculum and the content standards. Yes, because the content standards is what you have learned. And for the competencies, it's a combination of skills, attitudes, knowledge that the students develop and apply to a successful learning, living, and working. And it helps students grow and build upon what they know, how they think, and what they can do. So when we say competencies, it's all about how competent you are in order to have a higher or a good performance. So we say it involves the knowledge first, skills, attitudes, behavior. It talks about here because when we say competent, it involves knowledge. How the scope of your knowledge. It talks about the scope of the knowledge upon learning that certain topic. And when we say skills and attitudes, it's your attitudes as a teacher or as a student in dealing with a certain topic in the curriculum or dealing with the content standards. So for next, in learning targets. So for the learning targets, it's a concrete goals written in student-friendly language that clearly describes what students will learn and be able to do by the end of the class unit, project, or even a course. Or specifically, it refers to the learning objectives. So when we say learning targets, these are the concrete goals, or shall we say, what the expectations of the students after learning the subject or a particular course. So that is a learning targets. So now this is the conceptual framework of mathematics in education. As you can see, at the center is the critical thinking and the problem solving, because that is the core of the K-12 curriculum. So let's discuss them one by one. We have there the context, the content, the skills and process, mathematical tools, and the values and attitudes. So first, the core of the K-12 basic education curriculum, that is the critical thinking and the problem solving, but we have to identify them one by one. So when we say critical thinking, it is the central concept in educational reforms that call for schools to place greater emphasis on skills that are used in all subject areas. It is a process of actively and skillfully conceptualizing, analyzing, and synthesizing and evaluating gathered information from experience. So therefore, in overall, critical thinking is a general knowledge or your critic upon based on your experience. So let's say you have experience, or let's say in your performance, you are delivering your content, the content to your to the learners. So as teachers, after you're performing or delivering your topic, you have the right to critique your own performance if it is good or it is poor. When it is poor, then it is your task to target or to goal in the next time to be in the higher level of performance. So that is the critical thinking. And when we say the problem solving, it is an act of defining a problem. Yes, and determining the cause of the problem and implementing and finding solution to a given problem that is unknown. So when we say problem solving, so first, how can you address the problem? So first, you have to define the problem and determining what is the cause of the problem. And then after that, you have to find a solution for it in order to address the problem. And next, so the learning principles and theories. So first, we have the experiential learning. So experiential learning are engaged learning process whereby students learn by doing and reflected by the experiences. So from the word itself, experiential. So learn by doing. So we as the students or as the learners, we learn by doing. We are not just actively and passively receiving the information from the teacher, but we as well learn by doing. Let's say as students learn through the discoveries. Yes, through the discoveries, through his explorations, he can learn by his doing. And for the situated learning, it's a learning that takes place through relationship between people, connecting prior knowledge with authentic, informal, and often unattended contextual learning. So situated learning is a contextual based on a contextual learning. So whatever the situation is, and that is your base of your learning. So whatever the context, when we say in the classroom context, so the learning here is all about educational purposes. When we say about the community context, we have there let's say it involves the experiential learning. What you have experienced in the community, it will reflected upon the situated learning. And next, we have the reflected learning. So it's a form of education in which the students reflects upon their learning experiences. A theory about this cited it as an intentional and complex process that recognize the role of a social context and experience. So there is a bigger role about the social context and the experiences, because this is where you can reflect upon it. Because let's say your experience upon delivering your topic as a teacher, or upon learning the subject or the content course materials, so you have to reflect upon your work if your performance is good or bad. So it reflects upon the learning experiences, so it always based upon your experience. And for the constructivism, learners construct knowledge rather than passively take in information. As people experience the world and reflect upon those experiences, they build their own representations and incorporate new information into the pre-existing knowledge. So, a constructivism is a higher form of learning. Why? Because after you have the experiential learning, you have the situated learning, you have the reflected learning. So now constructivism exist in which the students will construct knowledge on their own based on their experiences, and the student is not just passively take an information but also actively reflected to the experience on what experience they have. So that is constructivism. Construct to your own learning based on your experiences and incorporate it to the pre-existing knowledge. And we have the cooperative learning. It's an active learning in which achieved when the learner work with others and engage in a shared tasks. It is an educational approach which aims to organize classroom activities into academic and social learning experiences. So when we say from the word itself, cooperative, you have to be active as well. So in order you have to cooperate. You have to cooperate in a group task, or either in a task that the teacher assigned to you. So let's say it exists when the teachers have a group task and everybody should brainstorm. So now it is an interactive learning between the students in a group. So it states here that it engaged in a shared task. So it's a group sharing. So and it's an educational approach which aims to organize classroom. So it organizes the classroom since you have to do with a group. So now you can see that it's an organized brainstorming about the students, and about the discovery and inquiry based learning is as students learn when they make use of personal experience to discover facts, relationship, and concepts. So discovery is same as with explorations. So we as the students and the teachers, we are not dependent upon on the experience, but also we discover things. We also learn by discovery. We also learn by explorations. For let's say, for examples, when we as the students, it is a kind of reflected learning. So me as a student, when I have encountered the hardship of understanding the topic and dealing with the solving problem, or that is a problem solving, and so what did I do is to search or to surf in the internet in order for me to understand a certain topic and in order for me to derive the correct answer. So that is a discovery. So I have now discovered the apps, the essential apps to be used, and the essential, let's say, the link or the references. So that is discovery, learned by your exploration. And next is, we have the content areas. Now let's proceed to the content areas. So when you say content, this is the specific areas where the students or the teacher should learn. First is in mathematics. So in mathematics, first we have to learn in a basic, for kindergarten to elementary, we have this number and number sense. And next we have the measurement, the centimeters, meters, and any measures. And for geometry, involves shapes. And patterns and algebra. When we say algebra, it involves an expression, equations. And there were basic, let's say, basic exponential, basic properties to be used, and like exponential, the basic laws of exponents to be applied in the algebra. And in the statistics and probability, so it is more about probability, let's say, that's it, probability. So for the skills and process, when we say skills, so and processes, knowing and understanding, estimating, computing and solving, visualizing and modeling, representing and communicating, conjecturing, reasoning, proving and decision making, and applying and connecting. So in order to learn the content areas, these are the skills and the process that a student or the teacher should be follow. First, knowing and understanding. Yes, it is our task as a teachers to understand the topic first before we deliver it to the students, in order the students to get learned from us. Yes, and estimating. Yes, we have the estimate numbers, especially in elementaries. So computing and solving, that is involved in the problem solving. Let's say in a real world problem solving, in a number problem solving, and visualizing and modeling. It relates to a graphic organizer in which each of them, the content should be shown and illustrated through concept map and any kinds of organizers. And reasoning, and that is used in geometry. Yes, we have the theorems and postulates. That also the proving and decision making, and applying and connecting. When we say connecting, well, we will connect our topic to the real world problem. Mathematical tools. So, what are the mathematical tools to be used in order to learn the content areas? So, first is the manipulative objects. Yes, manipulative objects. And measuring devices. Yes, we have the protractors, rulers, and graphing paper, pencils, and any kinds of measuring devices to be used in order to utilize the content and to deliver the content. And calculators and computers for solving. Yes, especially for higher mathematics content areas, we should use the calculators, especially in pre-calculus, calculus, or even in complex numbers. For smartphones and tablets and PCs, this involves the creativity. It talks about the creativity of the teachers in delivering the topic. And the internet as well. Especially now, we have this new mode of learning, which is the distance learning. So, we are required to have internet connections, a strong internet connections, in order to be competent and to maintain the good performance in our studies. Context. So, these are the context. First is beliefs. Second is the environment. Environment refers to the classroom or any context. Language to be used in order to deliver the topic in mathematics very well. Culture, it involves culture, yes, because as students we are diverse. We are diverse and we have to respect each culture. And learners' prior knowledge, yes, that's why we as the teachers, we have this pre-test in order to assess the knowledge of the students, and that is our advantage because it measures the students' prior knowledge. So it means when you have this higher rate in a pretest, so therefore you have to proceed to the next topic. And experiences as well. So, usually mathematics, it involves always experience. That's why you can see the learning principles, it's always reflected learning, situated learning, that is based upon the experience. So now we have the articulation of the performance standards into competencies, K-stage standards. So these are the standards of the content areas from kindergarten to grade 3. So learner in kindergarten, from kindergarten to grade 3, so the learner demonstrates the understanding of K concepts and skills involving first, numbers and number sense, in which it involves the whole numbers for grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, for fundamental operations including money, basic unit of fraction. So I remember this when I am in elementary. So these are the main topics. So when we say whole numbers, it discusses about the whole numbers from 1 to 10, counting numbers like the 4 fundamental operations, the addition, subtraction, division, and multiplications, and the basic unit of fractions like the proper fractions, it involves proper fractions like in the grade 4 and grade 5, grade 6, and the mixed numbers. And the measurements, so time, length, mass, capacity, and a simple area and square of a basic polygons. For geometry, we have this 2D and 3D dimensional objects, symmetry, and lines. So, when we say 3D, it is, when we say 2D, that is involves triangles, squares, and the 3D is about cubes, pyramids, cylinder, but it is more on basic. So, K-stage standards for patterns. So, that is the number sense and geometry. So, let's proceed for patterns and algebra. So, in kindergarten and to grade 3, there's also patterns and algebra, but a continuous and repeating patterns of a number sentences. So, as we can see there in the assessment, based on my experience as well, that is reflected learning. So, I observed that more on the assessments are more on patterns about shapes. Yes, patterns are about shapes. How many triangles? How many triangles did you see upon the illustration? Statistics and probability, data collections, tables, pictographs, and bar graphs, and outcomes. So, in the statistic probability, it also usually involves the graphic organizers. So, the ratings, like that, used as representations and decisions in real life. So, for K standards for grade 4 to grade 6. So, it is now a high kind of standards. So, learners demonstrate understanding of K concepts and skills involving number and number sense in higher form, like whole numbers, yes, includes already the number theory, the fractions in higher forms, decimals, ratio and proportion, percent, and integers. In measurements, we have time, speeds, perimeter. There, from kindergarten to grade 3, we have already the square and we have already the square. So now we have includes the volume and the surface area of the solid, space, figures, temperature, and the method reading. For geometry, we have the parallel and the perpendicular lines, angles, triangles, quadrilaterals, polygons, circles, and solid figures. For patterns and algebra, we have continuous repeating patterns, number sentences, sequence, and simple equations. Next, statistics and probability, we have the bar graphs as well, line graphs, pie graphs, simple experiment, and experimental probability. For grade 7 and grade 10, for number and number sense, sets and real numbers. So, it is where we have to tackle about sets, about union sets, intersections of the set, the universal sets, and real numbers. Real numbers involves the rational and irrational numbers, and in rational it involves the integers, the counting numbers, the whole numbers, and etc. So for measurement, we have the conversion of units, that is converting meter into centimeter, inches to foot, like that. We have that kind of measurement. Patterns and algebra, we have linear equations and inequalities, linear functions, system of linear equations, inequalities into variables, exponents, and radicals, but it's more on simples, quadratic equations, to be used by it also derived through the use of quadratic formula. So inequalities, functions, polynomials, and polynomial equation and functions. For geometry, we have polygons. Yes, we have polygons as well. Axiomatic structures of geometry. And the triangle congruence, we have this, the SAS, ASA congruence, SSS congruence. Inequality and similarity. And the basic trigonometry that is to be tackled in grade 9. So trigonometry, there are trigonometric functions like sine, cosine, tangent, cotangent, and cosecant and secant. So that are the trigonometric functions. So statistics and probability measures of the central tendency. So it involves the percentiles, deciles, and the quartiles. Variability and position, that it involves the mean and the standards deviations, combinatorics and probability. So now we have the articulations. So now we have to articulate the competencies into learning targets. So we will now have so I have here the examples of learning targets or learning objectives for grade 4 to grade 6. So based upon the content learning competencies. So at the end of the subject, the students are able to first classify angles as acute, right, obtuse, or straight, as you can see here below. So the students with illustrations, they have to classify angles, or they have to identify the kinds of angles in which of them are acute, obtuse, or the straight angle. And for number 2, constructing angle and segment bisectors. So number 3, finding the area of a polygons of a circles. Number 4, finding the perimeter and the circumference of the polygons of a circles, given that the area of a square is a pi r square. And when we say acute, that is angle less than 90 degrees, and the right angle is 90 degree, and a straight angle is 180 degree. Our next example of articulation of competencies into learning targets into grade 7 to grade 10. So first, they have, at the end of the lesson, the students will be able to first model and solve geometric situation using algebraic properties. So it involves the basic laws of exponents. And number 2, prove congruency of triangles. As you can see the illustration below, as you can see there are angles that are congruent, or 2 angles, respective angles. And it involves the SAS congruence, SS congruence, the ASA congruence. And for number 3, recognize and complete different styles of proof using deductive reasoning. So, example here is
So these are the following content standards to be able to learn from any grade level standards, including kindergarten. First, for kindergarten, the learners demonstrate understanding and appreciation of K concepts and skills involving numbers and number
Do we have
sense.
enough employees? So,
Whole numbers
in
up
deductive
to
reasoning,
20,
you have to show one
basic
by
concepts of
one
addition and
in order
subtraction,
to
geometry,
derive
basic
this
attributes of
solution.
objects, patterns, and algebra, basic concepts of sequence and number pairs, measurement and location and non-standard measures of length, mass and capacity, and statistics and probability. We have data collections and tables as applied using appropriate technology in critical thinking, problem solving, reasoning, communicating, and making connections, representations, and decisions in real life. For grade 1, the learners are able to demonstrate understanding and appreciation in key concepts of skills involving number and number sense, including whole numbers up to 100, ordinal numbers up to 10, money up to 100, addition, subtraction, and of whole numbers, and fractions 1/2 and 1/4 for geometry, 2 and 3 dimensional objects, patterns and algebra, continuous and repeating patterns and number sentences, measurement, time on standard measures of length, mass, and capacity, and statistics probability. We have tables, pictographs, and outcomes as applied using appropriate technology in critical thinking, problem solving, reasoning, communicating, making connections, representations, and decision in real life. For grade 2, the learners demonstrate understanding and appreciation of key concepts of skills involving numbers and number sense, including whole numbers up to 1,000, ordinal numbers up to 20, and money up to 100. The 4 fundamentals of operations of whole numbers and unit fractions. For geometry, we have basic shapes, symmetry, and tessellations. Patterns in algebra, we have continuous and repeating patterns and number sentences. For measurement, we have time, length, mass, and capacity. And statistics and probability, we have tables, pictographs, and outcomes as applied using appropriate technology in critical thinking, problem solving, reasoning, communicating, making correct connections, representations, and decisions in real life. For grade 3, we have the learners demonstrate understanding and appreciation of key concepts and skills involving numbers and number sense, including whole numbers up to 10,000 or real numbers up to 100, many up to 1,000 of the four fundamental operations of whole numbers, proper and improper fractions, and similar and dissimilar and equivalent fractions. For geometry, we have lines, symmetry, and tessellations. Patterns. On algebra, we have continuous and repeating patterns. And number sentences, measurements, we have conversion of time, length, mass, and capacity, area of square and rectangle. Statistics and probability, we have tables, bar graphs, and outcomes as applied using technology in critical thinking, problem solving, reasoning, communicating, and making connections, representations, and decisions in real life. For grade 4, the learners demonstrate understanding and appreciation of key concepts, skills, and involving numbers and number sense. Whole numbers up to 100,000, multiplication and division of whole numbers, order to operations, factors and multiples, addition and subtractions of fractions, and basic concepts of decimal including money, geometry, lines, angles, triangles, and quadrilaterals, patterns in algebra, continuous and repeating patterns and number sentences, measurement, we have time, perimeter, area, and volume, and the statistics and probability. We have tables, bar graphs, and simple experiments as applied using appropriate technology in critical thinking, problem solving, reasoning, communicating, making connections, representations, and decisions in real life. For grade 5, the learners demonstrate understanding and appreciation of key concepts and skills involving numbers. Number sense, we have whole numbers up to 10 million, order of operations, factors and multiples of fractions and decimals including money, ratio, proportion, percent. Geometry, we have polygons, circles and solid figures. Patterns in algebra, we have sequence and number sentences. Measurement, we have time, circumference, area, volume, and temperature. Solving, reasoning, communicating, making corrections, representations, and decisions in real life. For grade 6, we have the learner demonstrate understanding and appreciation of key concepts and skills involving numbers and number sense, divisibility, order of operations, fractions, decimals including money, ratio and proportion, percent, integers. For geometry, we have plane and solid figures, patterns and algebra, sequence, expression, and equations. Measurement, we have rate, speed, area, surface area, volume, and meter reading. And statistics and probability, we have tables, pie graphs, experiment, and theoretical probability as applied using appropriate technology in critical thinking, problem solving, reasoning, communicating, and connections and representations and decisions in real life. For grade 7, the learners demonstrate understanding of key concepts and principles of numbers and number sense, including sets and number system, measurement, conversion of units, measurement, patterns and algebra. We have algebraic expressions and properties of real numbers as applied in linear equations and inequalities in one variable. For geometry, we have sides and angles of polygons. As statistics and probability, we have data collections, representations, and measures of central tendency and variability as applied using appropriate technology in critical thinking, problem solving, reasoning, communicating, making connections, interpretation, and decision in real life. For grade 8, we have the learners demonstrate understandings of key concepts and principles of patterns and algebra. We have factors of polynomials, rational algebraic expressions, learner equations, inequalities into variable systems, linear equations, inequalities into variables, geometry. We have axiomatic structures of geometry, triangle congruence, inequalities in triangle and parallel and perpendicular lines, and statistics probability. We have probability and simple events as applied using appropriate technology. Same. For grade 9, the learner demonstrate understanding of key concepts for number sense. For patterns and algebra, we have quadratic equations and inequalities, quadratic functions, rational algebraic equations, variations and radicals. As geometry, in geometry, we have parallelograms and triangles, similarities, and the basic concepts of trigonometry as applied using same. We have technology, critical thinking, problem solving, reasoning, communicating, making connections, representations, and decisions in real life.
So, as you can see in every content standards, so content standards are the content or the topic that the teacher should deliver or the topic that the learner should learn. So in every content standards, there are performance standards and the learning competency that the student should be able to meet. So let's say for grade 1 in the first quarter, in grade 2 in the second quarter to fourth quarter. So there are the following standards and content standards, the performance standards and the learning competencies that the students are able to meet. And these standards, content standards are aligned with the different grade level standards topics.
For example, for the content standards for grade 1, the students will be able to demonstrate understands of whole numbers and up to 100, ordinal numbers up to 10, money up to 100, and the fractions 1/2 and 1/4. So these are the performance standards and learning competencies that the students are able to meet. First, is able to recognize, represents, and order whole numbers up to 100 and money up to 100 in various forms and contexts. And is able to recognize and represent ordinal numbers up to 10 in various forms and contexts. And for the learning competencies, the students will be able to visualize and represent numbers from 0 to 100 using variety of materials. Number 2, counts numbers and objects in given set by ones and tens and identifies the number that is one more or one less of a given number. Number 4, compose and decompose given number. Example, 5 is 5 and 0, 4 and 1 and 3 and 2 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 4 and 0 and 5. And number 5, regroup sets ones into sets, tens and sets tens into hundreds using objects. So these are some of example because there are a lot of examples in every quarter and every grade level. So in every grade level there are quarters. So it is the content standards is with respect to the grade level standards.